Hello, everyone, and welcome to LeeLa. I'm Lee Philbrook. The intention of the LeeLa community is to transform conversations and practices into actions that make a difference. And LeeLa comes from Sanskrit, and it means divine or creative play. It literally translates to your story, and we love to explore others' stories. It's going to be an awesome show this evening. We're going to start off with short backgrounds on us, your hosts, followed by an opening intention. And I am super excited for our special guest this evening, Hilary Van Welter. And Hilary is truly a pioneer in both health and change work. Hilary will engage us in a conversation around a revolution in mental health and addiction, inspired by the story Alice in Wonderland. Yes, Alice in Wonderland. I'm so excited. We know that mental health and well-being has been severely affected by the pandemic and the extended social isolation that we're all feeling, and the uncertainty. In any given year, 1 in 5 Canadians experience mental illness or addiction problems. Anxiety and depression are currently higher than they have ever been. Young people aged 15 to 24 are more likely to experience mental illness and/or substance abuse than any other age group. That is why this evening is so truly important. So after we finish the process with Hilary, we'll do closing announcements or our closing intentions, and then our final announcements. And a little bit of housekeeping before we kick it off. We encourage cameras. We'd love to see your smiling faces, unless of course you're eating dinner or working out, in which case turn off your camera. And please feel free to put questions in the chat box. We love your comments and questions. So without further ado, here we go. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Lisa English. Lisa?
Welcome to LeeLa, everyone. This is a safe space where you can all learn, explore, and most importantly, have fun. It's also a place where we hope to inspire you all to live a congruent and intentional life. I'm a teacher, entrepreneur, and content creator for small businesses. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation tonight with Hilary because I want to learn some new techniques to implement in my classroom and how I can also better support youth. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it back over to my co-host, Lee Philbrook. Lee?
I'm passionate about making meaningful connections, and I'm a heart-centered difference maker. I believe we have everything we need within us, and sometimes we get stuck in life. As a mindset coach, I work with the unconscious mind to empower individuals to transform, think, and live intentionally. My clients have better relationships, powerful new habits, and they love life. I'd now like to do our opening intention that really connects us and holds the space for the evening. So please close your eyes. May divine grace surround us, uphold us, and cherish us all. May it support us in our sacred trust and community. May we be strong together and our journeys be brighter and higher for having walked side by side. May we be guides for others and ourselves with clarity, tenderness, and light, feeling gentle in our minds and clear with our words, sending peace in all directions of time. With gratitude, we take this moment to arrive and join together. Open your eyes. Welcome to the room. And now over to Lisa to introduce our special guest. Lisa?
Hilary Van Welter is one of those people you just can't label. She has led expeditions into the future for over 40 years, having worked in all sectors. Her company, Essentia, is 23 years old and specializes in exploring new landscapes and frontiers, uncovering uncharted territory and unleashing hidden potential. As a person who thrives at the intersections of disciplines, Hilary undertakes breakthrough work through her designs and leadership of projects that weave together distinctly different perspectives and knowledge. The goal is to find enriching, inventive answers to significant challenges in our current turbulent world. And with that being said, I'm going to introduce our special guest of the evening, Hilary Van Welter. Welcome, Hilary.
I'm now unmuted. Greetings, everybody. And wow, I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here and to see some wonderful faces that I have not seen in a while. So Leslie and Cynthia, I have not seen you in such a long time. And Cindy is what a great companion over the last number of years that we gone down this road. And my wonderful sister-in-law, Kathy George, is with us. And I'm going to cry because it's so wonderful to see you, Kathy. And I know Tracy Kerrigan's here, and I know George. And so this is just a wonderful evening. And I also have with me my teammate of mine for the Call to the Mothers, which is Ramala Verma. And we'll speak a little bit with Ramala a little later on. So I'm thrilled to be here. And I come into this conversation with great humility. Because it's a vast area which is in radical need of just those statistics that Lee, you mentioned. We radically need a massive change right now. And I came into the whole area of mental health and addiction on a personal level. So my journey started with alcoholism, and it started 30 odd years ago. And in 1988, it was a very tumultuous year. I left the federal government of my own volition and went into private practice with my twin sister, which caused a lot of disruption. Also, my beautiful sister-in-law got married, and I made a deal with her and my brother that I would be sober for their wedding. And I did. I was sober for their wedding. But for my sister's wedding, a few months later, I was not. And it certainly was on record. I had a DUI that year. There was a lot of different things that happened. And luckily on October 24th, 1988, I walked through the doors of Amethyst, which was a women's facility in downtown Ottawa. I was drunk for the assessment. Of course, you always think that you're fooling everybody, but you weren't, but I wasn't. And it changed my life. I was in for 2 weeks of outpatient. So I went home at night. And then 2 years of follow-up where I had the most amazing group that I traveled through for 2 years of how we problem solve life without the pills or alcohol. I was the only woman actually that was not cross addicted. I was only alcohol, but most of the women there were also cross addicted with pills, and it was. But what a tremendous thing! But I really didn't understand what was really involved. Like I was very lucky for me in Amethyst because I got a new story. And the new story that I got was that it wasn't about my lack of free will, it was or willpower. It was the fact that I had a disease in my body where my chemistry would take alcohol and turn it into a heroin-like substance. And so I lost all kinds of control. I always needed more. And so it was the story that helped me transition was the story of disease. Now that's not true for everybody, but it certainly helped me. And it got me to the next stage, and 7 years later that I started to do energy work and started to get inside a lot of the other dynamics that were involved. What was also interesting was getting involved in that work was because of my youngest son. And my youngest son had a very tumultuous gestation. His father left, which caused me a humongous amount of stress. He was deemed to be Down syndrome. He was deemed to be dwarf. Kathy knows going through all of that pregnancy was just horrendous, was just terrible. But you know, he came out and was an amazing young man. But there was always things that happened along the way that were red flags that were and so while I went into energy work to start to understand the inner workings of myself, I started to realize that there was intergenerational trauma that my son was dealing with. And so we started together as a child, he and I, to develop new techniques. And we developed a whole range of different healing modalities, and became really good partners in exploring this. But over the years, things transpired, and they I spent many summers in the courts, and I've spent and I met Leslie, and Leslie was amazing at helping. He showed me an organization called APSCO where we would go for 3 years, and to try with other parents who were dealing with teens that were really struggling. And that organization saved my relationship with Cameron, because I probably would have made very different choices had I not been in that organization. All parents, all parents. And so but the culmination came for why the call to mothers was on the Cameron's 25th birthday. And he was in the psychiatric intensive care at South Lake Hospital. And I've never witnessed such horrendous situation as that. And I immediately went home, and my background allowed me to write a very good letter to the CEO. I had documented his previous stay as well as this one. And I was able to, I walked the letter up to her office, and within 24 hours, Cameron was released without a diagnosis at the time. But released back to me. We were no further ahead, but he was totally traumatized. He had been fundamentally traumatized by the experience. So and then he was given a diagnosis of schizophrenia, and that became a prison. So it has been a very difficult journey, as Kathy also knows, because of what's happened inside our family. And so I was, as luck would have it, during the pandemic, a gift was brought. Many gifts were brought actually to me during the pandemic, and this wonderful fellow Brett showed up, who he was 45 years old, living in England. But he is just a fabulous, he's from New Jersey originally, bipolar, and all about transformation and radical revolution in the area of mental health. So we got together and we started talking. And then I said, you know, there's another. And he said, I think it should be for the mothers, because the mothers, not just a mother, but, you know, the mother in all of us, the person who nurtures us, who calls to us, and who really wants to take care of us. And it was my mother who had been so amazing through all of this. So through all of my addiction, my mother had been the shining light of love for me. So I ended up connecting with Ramilla, whose daughter I was working with. So I knew the situation that Ramilla was looking at, and said, "Do you want to come along for a ride to see what we can do about all this?" And so she did, and that's where the call to mothers came from. That was a very long introduction, and I think I just spoke over 3 of your questions, Lee. I'm sorry.
No, that's beautiful, Hil. How would you describe youth mental health today?
Well, first of all, I think it's a really misnomer to call it mental health. And I think because we not just, mental health is every part of us. It's what is our well-being. And I think that our youth today are living through circumstances, my God, that I would never have wished on anyone, especially in the isolation that's happening now. When it was bad to start, let alone what we've lived through in the last year. I think it's a very misunderstood area. I think it's very easy to categorize and label. And I think it's really easy to put labels on our kids and say, this is your diagnosis, or this is your behavioral disorder, or this is your psychosis, or this is your dysfunction. And all we do is we imprison them with these labels. And then we say, okay, now you've got your label. Off you go, and you can go see a psychiatrist, or you get drugged out. And so I think it's an indicator today, I think, of a very shaky world that is trying to find a new way. And they're canaries in the mine shaft, very much canaries in the mine shaft, showing us what happens when we don't take care of ourselves and we don't take care of each other in the way we need to.
Absolutely. And I understand that this whole initiative uh, has been inspired by Alice in Wonderland. Why did you use this story? Can you give us a kind of a quick summary of what that's
For,
about?
for sure. It came, the idea of using Alice in Wonderland actually came through another gift of the pandemic, which is a gentleman by the name of Alex Pantia in Melbourne, Australia. And Alex and I were he saw my comment I made in a conference and reached out through LinkedIn and contacted me, and we would get together on a Sunday night. And one day I said, it just feels like we've fallen down the rabbit hole. And he immediately went and found a map of Wonderland that had been part of an exhibit in Melbourne a couple of years before. I looked at that map and I said, this is a really interesting metaphor, but also a roadmap for
Mm.
change. And then when I started doing the research on it, it was one of the most interesting ways in which characters in Alice in Wonderland are never deemed mentally ill. And they're never given labels like any of the psychosis or whatever, but they're very strange. And they're allowed to be strange, and they're allowed to be quirky, and they're allowed to have their own unique personalities and ways and wisdom. And they just are. So we chose Alice in Wonderland as the metaphor because because it's got so many different wonderful characters in it. It's also a story of literally falling down a rabbit hole where the strange became the strange became real, and like normal, and normal became strange. And so we felt that given the times of the pandemic, it was a very appropriate metaphor to use.
Yeah, it seems perfect. Yeah, especially removing the labels, I think is a key piece. So we'd love if you can walk us through your process so we can kind of better understand your approach.
For sure. So we're actually going to do it together. And so I'd like to do is I'm going to walk you through what it is. But I'd also love to, if you could play along at the same time and be part of the process and experience the process at the same time. So we do believe that what the call to mothers is right now is a call for people to come and play with us and join with us to undertake some really different kind of research to explore what are the issues and difficulties and cracks in the system that we're experiencing, and what are we grieving, and where are the new possibilities, and then putting them all together as a research piece. And then we're going to see once we've run these through a range of different places and different players, we're going to start to see what are the concepts around, because we want to even get rid of the term mental health. We want to get rid of the term addiction, because we want to find some new language with which to describe it. And so the call to the mothers is and this is a quote that I just felt was so wonderful. It comes from Thomas Hübel's most recent book, Healing Collective Trauma. He's an amazing teacher and transformer, specializes in the area of collective and intergenerational trauma. And he writes in his book, this is the opening paragraph: the call is a clarion invitation that is always sounding. Sorry, I've got to move this a little bit because I can't read my that is always sounding, but can only be heard in the heart of great longing. At this time in human history, there's a new calling, a powerful invitation rising from a sense of deep collective longing. It calls us toward a shared quest, one that will entail both practical and spiritual action. So he's writing about this as intergenerational trauma, and we felt this very much applied to what we're doing in the area of mental health and addiction. Sorry, I'm just going to, here we go. And at its core, it is a journey of collective healing. To succeed, we must begin to make whole the rift between the worlds of science and spirit, to create a sacred marriage between vital yet formally contradictory domains. Its fulfillment brings unity in place of division, integration rather than separation. As with all great heroic journeys, our very survival depends on it. So it's about mixing together all kinds of different philosophies, approaches, methodologies, and see what happens when we mix those all together to start looking at well-being. And we also think the whole area of mental health and addiction needs a radical innovation of meaning. So, what if those who are deemed to have a mental illness and addiction are, in fact, the pioneers and adventurers of a new era of well being, who came to actually help us figure this out? And what if these individuals are the brave souls whose purpose is to clean up the widespread and deeply systemic intergenerational and collective traumas so we can co create a better world for all? And what if the solutions we so desperately need are currently percolating in the field of the preposterous? And this is a wonderful diagram that comes from our colleague Brett, where preposterous is in the outer echelons of impossible and won't ever happen. And we believe that there are already some amazing things already percolating in there that you turn it. Well, we're going to turn and say, well, of course that can happen. Of course we can do that. So the process that people come and undertake with us, it consists of four different experiences, and it's again all based on the journey of Alice in Wonderland. So the hallway of doorways. Remember when she goes down the hallway, there's all the doorways and some are too big and some are too small. Well, this is the area where we explore the cracks and the breakdowns that's happening in the current system and in our current way of how we even envision mental health and addiction. And then if you remember, Alice cried so much that she created this whole sea of a pool of tears. So in the pool of tears, we explore where is the grief, what is dying, and what I found, especially in this last year, of how important it's been to grieve and how important it is to let go of those things that may no longer exist again, in order for the new to be able to come forward. And the new is the looking glass, and that is the idea of a whole bunch of different wow ideas. And then finally, so the process is as you travel through those three parts of Alice's experience, and then we pull them all together into the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, where we make up a strange brew. So let's try it. Let's go down the rabbit hole together, and let's start with the hallway of doorways. So in the process that we do together on this one, there's 12 different doorways, and individuals are asked to pick a door number, and then they go to the card that has the number on it. Each card has a different question. So let's have a look at question number. If you pick door number 4, you would have the question of what chaos and uncertainty have you experienced with your family member? And this came from our most recent session where the participant said there was total fear and trauma as a result of the experiences in the hospital. The lifelong sentence of the diagnosis actually creates chaos rather than security. The periods of chaos are interspersed with total numbness, like being sedated from life. And I have witnessed extreme emotional and mental stress, inability to deal with trauma, leading to suicidal thoughts. So those are just some of the things that were shared with that what this current system is generating. So what I'd like to ask you to do is to think about what are the cracks and breakdowns in the current mental health system that you see and feel are increasing. And if you want to just sense into the card, into the graphic on the screen, that is actually the Tower card of the Alice in Wonderland Tarot. And of course, the Tower is when things start crumbling down. And so if you could just think about what are the cracks and breakdowns in the current mental health system you can feel or see are increasing. And what we'd love you to do is to share what comes up for you. Lisa's going to put a link into the chat to the Google Doc. And if you could just take a moment and write down what you feel are the cracks and breakdowns in the current mental health system that are increasing right now. Just take a minute or two to jot down your thoughts. If you would help us out with some of this research, it would be greatly appreciated. But also, it's fun to see how we can play with this at the end. Lisa, do you think we're ready to move on?
Yeah, we've got quite a few people entering. So
Great, and keep going. If you want to just, you'll keep putting your thoughts in there, please go ahead. That would be fantastic for us. So those are the cracks and the breakdowns in the current system. And the next part of the inquiry is the pool of tears. And this is where we get into those things that we're finding are our pain points, our real pain points. So in the last session that we did, this is what we got when we asked the question: in the realm of mental health and addiction, what are you grieving? For some, it was the loss of my 10-year relationship a few months ago, the loss of my mother 7.5 years ago, the extreme hurt of people suffering in this realm, loss of innocence, anger in certain family members, strained relationships, the despair of my son, his dreams he had as a child that now feel unreachable, that I have been unable to make a large scale impact in changing the system. People are suffering and not getting help they need that really gets to the root of their disease. And the reality of ignorance. Most people don't know better, and those that do is another post-it. So those were some of the answers that we got. And one of the things that was identified was how much this current system is in trauma, that the whole mental health system is actually experiencing trauma right now. So again, what I would love you to do is to also, if you're yourself, to think about in the realm of mental health and addiction, what might you be grieving? This could be with some people you know in your own family, or people or friends that are experiencing the issues with mental health and addiction. Could be your own experience. But what are you grieving? What is making you really sad about all this? This whole domain is very sad. Or what's making you angry?
we've almost got a full page, Hilary.
Fantastic. This is the one, you know what? We are grieving. There's a lot of emotion sitting inside this topic. And if nothing else, we have to let it get it out, because it's so hard. I know in my own lifetime how easy it is to hold on to that grief, and yet it can kill us. But it's also really important to know what it is, so we know how the system, or whatever, how we go forward has to change, because we can't keep suffering. This is where the suffering's happening. So this process has been designed so that there is the opportunity to vent, there's the opportunity to cry, to feel sad, to let out those deep emotions. But it's also the opportunity to look to the positive, to look to what we can do, to look to some wonderful new things in the future that are possible. And so for the session that we're running right now, over the last one we ran, we used 12, what I would call these as placeholders, in that they represent very different kinds of thinking, different kinds of approaches when it comes to looking at the well-being, how we live. So there's the realm of biofield healing, which includes Reiki and looking at the energy system and how to the whole area of energetics. Then there's epigenetics, which is the science of understanding intergenerational trauma and how we inherit certain patterns and beliefs and ways of living and ways of thinking, and what impact that has on us. You know, it was funny when I was in my drinking days, my grandmother would say to me, "Oh, you know, darling, my brother loved the drink." And it was only when I when I started doing energy work, I realized that was my intergenerational assistance in alcoholism, which I've been very grateful to, because it's taught me a great deal. Equine therapy is another one. I don't know if any of you have experienced it, but my God, I have only twice, but I would go back anytime. These horses are so intelligent and so amazing. And every time I gave an answer, it would stomp its foot because I didn't go deep enough. I thought, oh, that's a good answer. And then it would stomp its foot. And I'd have to keep going until finally he came over and nudged me. I'd gone deep enough to give the answer, and I was raw by the time I finished. What an amazing horse. Family system constellations are another one that again, I've been really lucky to have to have been part of to have tried all of these. It's a whole mapping of a family system and looking where the breakdown in the family system has occurred, and not just using individuals from the family to do it, but actually working with an energy field in which others represent, or you represent, the different elements of the family, and start to explore where the breakdown is going through and happening, and it's intergenerational. I've done many of these in the last 2 years, and I'm amazed at how phenomenal they are. Forest bathing, and we all know about being in nature and what the energy the trees give off. Their oils also have a very interesting impact on us. Future Thinkers Smart Village. Kathy George posted this the other day too, and it's a wonderful a group that have started this very different look at how to live in nature, where you're in the middle of the most beautiful environment, but you're also working with all the top-notch technologies. You're working with new transportation technology, new regenerative agriculture, solar panels, energy. So it's a very different way of integrating top of the line technology as well as nature. Vibrational sound healing. Cindy does this really, really well, and it's a great, it's a really wonderful process. And I had a vision around the call to the mothers in February last year in a sound bath. Heart math has been around many years, looking at how to get coherence between our head and our heart, and how, when we're in that sense of coherence, that we actually start to function in a very different way. The idea of 3 brains, that it's our head, our heart, and our gut, and how important that is to have them in coordination with each other. Nutritional therapies, a major piece as well. Regenaissance studios are studios that looking at art, science, and culture, and how those can come together to create very different kinds of ways of seeing the world, as well as professions, as well as new opportunities. And last but not least, of course, shamanic practice. Which I know Cindy is probably incredibly, Cynthia is very familiar with the shamanic practice, and working with nature and the animals in a very distinctly different way. So these are just 12, and our goal is that we will continue to create an inventory of these. But they're a really important part of understanding that there's already amazing opportunities that are happening right now in this field that can be brought in, and there's no reason why these cannot be immediately put in place to deal with mental health and addiction. So now's the fun part, where we go into the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. And the Mad Hatter, I don't know if you know why he had the 4 and 20 was that the Mad Hatter was actually deemed to have gone like they call people Mad Hatters because of mercury that people would ingest, and therefore they would be mad as a hatter. And baking hats also they dealt with a lot of mercury. So that's one of the reasons for the Mad Hatter. And interestingly enough, the Queen of Hearts, she actually used time as a punishment. So he was, because she didn't like what he'd said one day to her, the Mad Hatter had to have his tea party every day at 6 o'clock. And that was it. So he was always stuck in the perennial 6 o'clock. And I thought that was sort of cool for COVID, because we all feel we're sort of stuck in time. So the idea of the Mad Hatter's Tea Party is to pick one crack from the hallway of doorways, and then pick a pain point from the pool of tears, and then pick a cool idea from the looking glass, and then put them together and bibbity bobbity boo, to use another Walt Disney saying, to see what kind of strange brew comes out. So this is where the magic happens. So what's really lovely about this process, and I want to give huge kudos to Alex, who unfortunately died in March, just a few weeks ago. It's so suddenly at 66. And what we loved about putting this process together was that it was in this magic where the magic happened, was pulling together three very different things and seeing what got co-created from them. So let me give you a few examples, and we're going to ask you to do that as well, to create some strange brew from what we've got on the various Google Docs. So what Ramilla came up with was, when she did this, was the crack was the system itself is in trauma, and so is frozen. And then from the pool of tears, it's no use to look back to yesterday because I was a different person then, which is again the constant change that we are all part of in Alice in Wonderland. That's a quote from Alice in Wonderland. And then the future thinker's smart village. And then so what Ramilla found when she pulled them together was that the past trauma, it has brought about frozen systems and people, and that we absolutely need a metamorphosis. So this isn't about an incremental change. It literally is the caterpillar going into becoming the butterfly, and a metamorphosis to see how can it not just fill gaps but unfreeze, and the whole idea of creating future revolutionary possibilities. So for Ramilla, this was a really important part, and also it had intergenerational perspectives as well as cross-cultural perspectives as part of that. Brett's was the issue of addiction makes me think very deeply because it's a crack into our most evident weaknesses. The pool of tears was watching my son rage, feeling absolutely powerless, and then he had heart math. And when Brett chose his, he chose them totally arbitrarily. He didn't think. He just went literally grabbed one, grabbed one, and then saw what he put together. But what he found was when he pulled them together, we reclaim our power, our ability to decide and choose when we attune with our heart and feel the relief of coherence, a point of centeredness where we are no longer powerless over our addiction. And he was referring there to one of the issues around the 12 steps, where it's about giving up our power, that we are powerless when it comes to our addiction. And he wanted to, and what this process did was helped him flip it on its head and say, no, I do have power, and I do have a say, and I do want to find coherence in the system, not just in myself. So I think it's time to I'll just quickly mine where multicultural and diversity was missing. We now need to, I can't read mine because I've got it covered. Nowhere to turn, dealing with the situation in isolation, and the whole idea of a renaissance studio. And so My Strange Brew was a studio experience that shares multicultural practices, explore key interests to those present, using examples of regeneration and frontier ideas as a way of healing. These bring a sense of hope and sow seeds. So the idea is that rather than individuals coming into an experience like rehab or whatever, where you've got to get clean and then you can start to explore what you want to do with your life, is you come into the experience in the confusion of addiction, in the confusion of mental disorder, inside the process of whatever is happening in your life. And the first thing that you do is you have an experience of finding things that you love in the fog of all of those things, not when you're clean and sober, but in the fog. And so that's the concept that came out of that one. And that's with that, the ability to be able to feel a spark of something and being open to these brand new ideas and these new possibilities, and opening yourself up to what could be. Then you have the modus operandi. You have the desire to want to be able to find your way through it, and with all the opportunities of these alternative practices to help you do it. So, Lee, how much time do we have? We have some time, right, to do this last bit?
Yeah, we've got till 8:35.
Okay. So if you could, there is another Google link that that Lisa's putting in that takes you to the hallway of, takes you to the Mad Hatter's tea party. So it means, this does mean you have to go back and forth to a couple of documents. But if you could pull out a crack from the hallway of doorways that resonates with you, or that you feel it might be one of yours, or it could be somebody else's, a pain point. And Lisa's also putting into the chat a access to that last slide in Google Docs, so that you can have a look at the 12 different, or you may have other modalities that you would like to put in. It doesn't, don't relegate yourself just to that one. And then put those 3 in and see what happens when you put them together.
Beautiful. And just so people know, it is anonymous for those that haven't gone on. When you type, you become an animal, an anonymous animal, typing the stuff in there. So it's from that perspective, it's wonderful. And Hilary, maybe the looking glass pieces can maybe go up as well, so people can look at some of those possibilities as well while they do this.
And could I ask a favor? Could you play a little bit of music for a couple of minutes? So we have some background music to do our creating with.
I can certainly do that.
Thank you. That's a little impromptu request. We've never talked about that.
All good. I'm on it.
Yeah, Cynthia, I'm not exactly sure what it is we're supposed to do.
Okay, so Cynthia, you go into, the first thing you do is you go into the list that's on the Google Doc that has the a listing of the cracks in the system. There was the Google Doc that has two columns in it. One has the cracks and one has the pool of tears.
Yeah.
You pick one out of each of those columns.
Okay.
You pick one thing from each of those columns.
Okay. And then you put them in.
You drop it in. So you drop your one in under the so where it says, hang on a second here. I'm gonna get to the slide.
Why don't maybe Lisa, if you can share that, if you stop screen sharing.
Yes.
And Lisa can put up that document so people can see how that works, that would probably be helpful.
So the idea is to pull one of the, going into the hallway, if you want to go over, Lisa, to the hallway and pull Google Doc, the other one, just to see where you draw from. So you could take out any one of these ideas from the hallway of doorways and put it under that column in the Mad Hatter Tea Party, any one of them.
Okay.
And then you take one from the Pool of Tears, any one of them, and you drop it into the next column over.
Okay.
And then you add one from the Looking Glass.
From the Looking Glass. Where did that come from?
And the Looking Glass is, we're going to put it, I'm going to put it up. It's these. So you have one crack that you've identified, one pain point from the Pool of Tears you've identified, one cool idea from this list that resonates with you, and see what happens when you put those 3 things together.
Okay. All right. All right. How do you pick it up? Oh.
Or you just you should be able to just, how do you do it, Lisa? You just go and copy. How to copy it from?
Yeah, just copy it from here. Copy, and then paste it into the other column in here. And Hilary, I can only share sound if I'm sharing my screen. So
Okay, so go ahead.
I can keep this up.
Yes, great.
Okay. And let me know if you can hear in a sec. Oops.
So one offer too is that if you just want to drop in your three, the crack and the pain point and the new and the wow idea, but you can't figure out what they create together, we can do that together too. So if you're stumped with what it mean, what you could create from all three, don't worry about it. We'll do that together. So if you just put your ingredients in, we can co-create some things here. The whole idea is just to play.
Please let me feel inner peace from my center, at the center of me. Please let me feel inner peace from my center, at the center of me. Please let me feel inner peace from my center, at the center of me. My heart is open, I am aware, in me's a knowing. Love, 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 my heart is open. I am aware, in me's a knowing. Love, 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 love.
That's pretty cool.
Please let me feel inner peace from my center, at the center of me. Please let me feel inner peace from my center, at the center of me. Please let me feel your peace from my center, the center of me. Please let me feel your peace from my center, and the center of me. My heart is open, I am aware, in me's a knowing. Love, 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 my heart is open, I am aware, in me's a knowing. Love, 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 love.
Let's just take 2 more minutes, and then we can just look at these wonderful ideas that you've come up with and how they can be used. So the purpose of this activity is to it's a research part. It's research with play. As we take this into different domains in different places with very different players, we're going to be getting different research on what the cracks that are perceived, where the pain points are, with a growing inventory of new ideas. And then the Mad Hatter's Tea Party is an opportunity to start seeing, are we getting some understanding about new principles, new techniques, new modalities, a combination of different modalities that can be used. So I think that probably what our biggest goal right now is just to have us think about, how could it be different? How could it be different for so many different individuals that are struggling? And when we know that the current scenario is that as soon the places where we can go, even as a parent, are so, I've gone through them all. I've gone through the crisis centers. I've gone through all the different facilities. I've gone through every single kind of healing modality, individually, and we're just not seeming to find a movement of pulling all these things together into some kind of of an approach that, and it could be a place that gets piloted where all these modalities are available. It could be a series of, at the beginning, a series of little pop-ups that start to emerge, that become places that individual can come on a weekly basis. We don't know yet, because we're not going to presume we know what the answer is until we've done the research. But at the same time, the opportunity to play with this data, to look at the different things that are happening in the system, and recognizing again how traumatized the system itself is. It's so interesting. My son went into South Lake last year with a heart condition, and I won't go through all of the different things that we had to go through to have me there, because it was COVID. But he was treated so differently on that side of the hospital than he was had he been entered through the mental health side. Two total, and he was the same person. He was having episodes while he was in there for the heart condition, but he was treated so differently. And it created a very different experience, because he didn't want to go into hospital, and he had fluid around his heart, and he could have died, but he didn't want to go in because of the experience he'd had 2 years before on the mental health side. But there's people working in the system themselves are tired, and they're very well meaning, but totally traumatized by what they're experiencing. And we're not helping them either, by not providing a whole range of different modalities from them to get to find their healing, and for them to get rejuvenated again. So let's, Lisa, could we throw up the to see what we have as some ideas?
For sure.
Thank you for playing, everybody. I know you didn't come here to work. So we have the hallway of doors, too long between hurt and help. Yeah, that's so true, that there's a situation that happens, and then we have to go on a waiting list before we can actually get to see anybody. And the whole idea of the feeling of hopelessness, and to feel hopelessness as a youth, when it's the time when you're sort of meant to feel the most hopeful. But there's an opportunity with heart math to start understanding that there is coherence that can be brought in, that coherence can be brought in for the individual, and the coherence can be brought in between the individual and their life. And how does an individual find that coherence? By looking at, in the process of heart math, and heart math has some wonderful techniques, and how those could be offered, even at a time as a methodology that allows, in stress situations, to go into the techniques of heart math. Why are that even if you're in a waiting room, it's amazing what that can do. But if we start thinking about heart math and recognizing that this isn't about mental health, look at how amazing the heart is. And how can the heart bring a different modality and ways of understanding the situation that's going on, and bring a whole different approach when we start dealing it from a heart-based. And we've learned that in the last year, especially organizations that have become far more heart-based are starting to deal with the social unrest and the social concerns, are becoming far better at dealing with holistically with the with people's health issues. The doorway, the hallway having so much judgment. There is absolutely so much judgment on individuals that are struggling with these dynamics. And there's no ceremony or healthy rituals. Absolutely. Ceremony, my gosh, the use of ceremony is so critical. One thing I learned this year was that in order for the reptilian brain to ever change its perspective or its way of seeing the world, it has to go into ceremony. That's the only way that it will shift. And that the earth, it has its own understanding of energetic ritual, so that it creates its vibrations during rituals that heighten the vibration and that allow us to actually feel differently in those rituals. And the idea of the three brains as being that whole amazing interconnection of the system. There was, interestingly enough, there was a session I was at last week where they were talking about the soil, and how the soil is the called the membrane of life. And it's not very, there's not much to it. It's a very thin layer, but it holds the microbes that are needed for all of our earth for all of us to be able to survive healthily on this earth, and how much we need to regenerate it. Well, it's the same thing in terms of the soil, that we, like I said, the microbes that are sitting in our stomachs. They are the same kind of microbes that are sitting in the soil. And so when we think about that, and the connections that we don't make, that are sitting right in front of us, about how that brings about well-being. And the whole idea here, to see each individual for who they really are, celebrate the whole person through various ceremonies, rituals that celebrate every aspect of our humanity. I want to cry with that one, because it's so beautiful and it's so simple. And yet, bringing ritual back in, bringing ceremony, bringing the honoring, and the ceremony of releasing the darkness, the ceremony of opening to understand the trauma, and to not just have to live through it, but to let it go and to move through it and out the other side. I've always believed that trauma is the signpost that takes us to some of the most beautiful gifts that are sitting inside us, that they are the signpost on top of a treasure. And that once, if we could think of ceremony as a way and ritual to get us there, it'd be amazing. That one of the cracks are no solutions, just bouncing from episode to episode, to absolutely, absolutely, and the whole feeling of helplessness that brings along with it. The one that addicted youth can be inspired to try new things while still addicted. Yes, that, it's. I truly believe that this is one of the big answers, to all of this, is to allow for that to happen, is to promote that, and for places where you can go in and you can explore these and have a reason to want to detox, and then to do detox in ceremony, in ways that honor the individual, not hidden away and shoved away into a dark room, because that's where only you can, that's where you have to detox, is in the, or strapped down and sedated, which is normally the way detox is done. Too many drugs and not enough love. Oh, so true. No ceremony and rituals as well. Forest bathing and bringing that connection in with nature. There was a session today on Humanity Rising, and I fully suggest that any of you that have some time next week, there's 4 days of conversations with nature. And it's run by a beautiful woman, P, and I can't remember her last name for the life of me. But we can make sure that you get the link to it. And it is about animal communication, and the idea that of how animals communicate with us. And how, for an example, the whales do the phenomenal job of recalibrating and revibrate and totally having to recalibrate the oceans to deal with the earth. and to be able to bring that back into harmony. The role, one of the topics next week is going to be the role of the polar bears in, recalibrating our vibrational energy fields, and how animals do that. That's why equine therapy and others are so fantastic. And with bring the trees and the forests and the animals together, it truly is love. And medicating as the solution, absolutely. Let's make sure that we sedate and medicate. And lack of connection, and working with epigenetics is, and understanding intergenerational trauma is a absolute must in all of this work. So I applaud you. So the process is very much that. It's exploring, it's seeing, and working with a range of other people's perspectives, and seeing what can we create. And then our job is taking that information as we go forward, and starting to and curating it, and saying, what are we hearing? What are we hearing are the real cracks, and from that, where's the opportunity? Where are the pain points that we absolutely have to address, because they are causing so much suffering? And then what are these new opportunities, and how do we start playing with those, and seeing what you could see just even in the little time that we had here. There were some burgeoning fabulous concepts that could be brought, that could be mobilized right now. It's not about waiting to do them. So the ideas too is, how do we take some of these ideas and start thinking, oh, I could try that now. I know someone that I could go into ceremony with, and try something with that might help. And so our role right now is orchestrating this research, looking at what are we hearing, and then sharing it in ways that we can say, okay, let's see, what does this create? What can we create with all this? This is a collaborative, fully co-creative, collaborative effort. And then the call to the mothers then becomes that first initial research that then gets generated into whatever it's going to get generated into. We don't know. That's the beauty of it. We don't know. But we do know that it will be a whole different philosophy and understanding and way of looking at human beings, and how we can help us all reach our highest potential. So I'm 2 minutes early, Lee. I'm 2 minutes early.
That's awesome, Hel. What an amazing experience. And I think there are some questions that we've had in the chat box. I don't know, Lisa, if you wanted to
Sure.
address those questions. I think George had a number of really great questions.
Yes, George had 3 questions. So I'll read you the first one. He said, what do you think the system is avoiding?
I think it's avoiding change at all costs in many ways. And I think that it's, again, very well meaning. And I have to say, I was involved in a major mental health initiative in the early 2000s. And it was, we were commissioned to do some really interesting work by the Canadian Mental Health Foundation. And we chose to interpret it as, let's see how the system needs to change. And we called it the Undo Project. And within that, we had a taboo campaign with crazy art that was going to appear guerrilla-like style in cities all across Canada. We were terminated because we were told that the system didn't want to, it wasn't about changing the system, it was about promoting it. So again, I think it's because this is the way it's always been done, and the fear factor of having to change it is so high that I think they're avoiding the fact that there might be other ways to do this, and but they've been trained that there are only certain, that they're working with the brain, and this is the way to work with the brain, and this is the way to work with mental disorder, and we're saying let's throw all that out and put it on the side. And there's elements that will need to be looked at, and there are that will be brought back in, and there will be medications in certain circumstances required, and there will be institutionalizing for certain individuals at certain times. We're not saying that, it's the spectrum, that's the only answer for everybody. And we're saying, no, it's not the only answer for everybody.
Okay, so George's next question was, do you know if cross patterning is still being used?
George, what's cross patterning?
One moment, please. Yeah, it's where you work with a therapist who operates the hands to cross pattern the brain to left and right. It goes back to the early 80s. I don't know whether it's still being used or not.
I think there's a lot of techniques like that now. I think well, and Lee would know about through neuro-linguistic programming and certain
Right.
modalities that are used to be able and writing with different hands and just trying to get connections in the brain happening
Yeah,
that
right.
that may not have happened.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if is Sue on the call, because Sue might be able, Sue Nash, if she's on the call, she could speak to cross patterning. Are you there, Sue? Maybe not.
She's having dinner.
It sounds like Brain Jam, actually.
Oh, there
Oh
she
yes,
is.
Brain Gym.
There
Yes.
she is. We got her on camera. Yeah.
So the question about cross patterning is what?
Is it still being used?
I use it all the time. I use
Okay.
it in all movement patterning because I want the right and the left brain hemispheres both working. So I believe that movement and orientation of movement, so the more we move in planes of motion, so that cross patterning and flexion, extension, rotation, and all planes of motion helps our brain integrate through proprioception and keep our brain very active. So cross patterning is always huge for
Great.
my work.
Another
Good.
good modality to put up there. Thank you.
Right.
You're welcome.
Beautiful. Thanks, Sue.
Sure.
And George
Okay.
had another one was what is the effect of the legal use of Mary Jane in the field of disabilities? And I think that that's a very early, that's very early right now to be able to look at, but there's been lots of interesting studies on the use of marijuana in rehab, in looking at how does it help certain individuals. Again, it's like anything. For some individuals, it becomes an addiction. For other individuals, it becomes the tool that helps them make the kind of change they need to make. So what I think is really exciting about this whole field is that it's going to be a massive different forms of professions that are going to become available, and that to have people that could actually do really interesting assessments of how do you assess where an individual is at and what kind of modalities do you want to combine to be able to try as the next step. So it's like a chef that's able to take all these different ingredients and say, based on what I'm experiencing of this individual and using very different types of diagnostic tools to do that, what might help in this next stage, and then what might help. And it's not about finding any silver bullets. It's about, we all know that we're in a lifelong journey here, and that we're always evolving. And what helps us get through the trauma stage and the crisis stage into a place where we start to feel that we can cope. And then from cope, we can survive. And then from survive, we can thrive. And I think there's a different series of modalities that are used all the way through that continuum. To me, it's incredibly exciting what is now available to us.
Yes. And what I notice too, when I go into the pot shops, we got a couple of new ones here in Picton. And what's interesting, and the conversation is not about joints and marijuana. The conversation, I've got a pain here, I got an itch here, I'm depressed, I can't sleep. So the conversations are what gummy bears, what combinations can you offer me that I can get a little bit of relief? And I thought, wow, that's really fascinating how the dope shops are not so much about getting high anymore as about providing a certain amount of relief for the population. That's just my experience in the various places.
And who would have known, George? Who would have known?
Yeah. Hello.
Like those transitions, and there's there's also the use of all kinds of hallucinogenics, also to help people process through different traumas and get to the other side of them. Getting to the other side, and when especially was intergenerational. And we've been carrying these traumas for 2-3 generations. When I did some work with a German doctor at Constellation last year with respect to Cameron, and what I found in that, in terms of both grandparents and war experiences, and how that had been handed down, and how Cameron what he had inherited from that, and how it had impacted him. Now it continues to impact him. You know, this is a total world of amazing opportunities to explore. But we've got to be brave. And we've got to be brave, and we need courage to be able to say there are new ways and there are different ways of doing it. I do. And what I'd like to do is just very quickly turn it over to Ramila, because what's next, I think, is our question, right, Lee, about at least where are we going to do next? And Rami, do you want to just share a little bit about University of Toronto?
Yes, of course, sure. Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ramila Verma. I teach at University of Toronto. I'm a sessional instructor with the Department of Geography and School of the Environment. I grew up in India in a city called Calcutta. It's called Kolkata now. And just what Hilary has been talking about, the trauma, and especially the intergeneration and community-based trauma that I witnessed around me. I got malaria at age 10, jaundice no, first I got typhoid at age 14, and then jaundice at age 20. So what I saw, I was able to survive because my parents could afford at least, medication and good health, good doctors and whatnot. But a lot of children do not survive. The malaria, typhoid, jaundice, I did survive all three, and so many millions of kids around the world and do not survive. And growing up with this kind of societal or community-based trauma had a huge impact on me. And in a traditional family in India, I'm talking about 1980s, when you're 20, 21, you get married off. But my parents supported me, and they said, okay, if you want to study, go ahead. I did. I finished my PhD in hydrology when hydrology wasn't even in anybody's radar. We were not talking about water in 1980s and 1990s. Came to Canada, had my three amazing girls. I have three daughters, and joined U of T at 2009 to teach water resource management. And now I teach environmental science, graduate water resource management, hydrology, and a few other courses. So what ended up happening here is my connection to Hilary. I met her in 2006, just coming out of my maternity kind of haze. I was in a fog. It was just, one of the best things that happened to me. Met with Hilary, and she was working with Ladies of the Lake Simcoe, watershed regeneration projects, and she hired me as a lead scientist on looking beyond the science, jargon-free
Sorry, Rami.
Yeah.
Sorry, sweetheart. We are sorry. We have to wrap up a bit in
Okay.
about a
Oh,
minute. So
oops,
could you just
sorry
talk?
about that.
I'm sorry. We should have a whole show on you. I think we're going to recommend to Lee
Yeah,
and
no,
Lisa.
absolutely understood. Yeah. So so we connected, and since then we have been partnering with. I've been partnering with Hilary. She comes in as a guest lecturer. So moving forward with this program, with my own daughters struggling with, one of them in the spectrum, struggling with mental health issues, and as Hilary said, one of the daughters she supports. So what we are doing moving forward is coming up with data mining. We are going to curate all the information we get through these workshops, and we are going to put up a proposal, partner with the University of Toronto. So we are kind of in the process. And once we have everybody on board, we are envisioning a physical space and also with my students struggling with mental health issues, eco-anxiety, so many things that we need to address. So this program will have a home, hopefully at University of Toronto and beyond. So that would be the next step for us, is to curate all the data mining, what information we are getting, and take it to University of Toronto. So that's where we are heading, and hopefully we will make it work.
It's going to happen.
Yes.
Thanks, Rami.
You're welcome.
This is so exciting. Thank you, Romney and Hilary. What an incredible evening. Thank you for your time and expertise and exploration. Alice in Wonderland, how beautiful. We now like to do our closing intention that really connects us for saying goodnight. So can you please close your eyes? As we close our time together with gratitude to all, we pause to offer each other love and kindness. May our understanding of love be expanded by what we have shared as we open ourselves to growth. May we rest in trust and surrender ourselves and our paths to divine grace, asking that this time together be protected, corrected, and held high. May we now see through love's eyes and understand beyond words. May we all be safe, happy, and healthy. May we all rest in full joy and know that there is no distance between friends in time or space. Divine strength and peace surround us until we meet again. Open your eyes. And now for our final announcements, over to you, Lisa. Lisa?
Thank you so much again, Hilary, for a informative and amazing evening. Looking forward to everything that's happening at U of T. So tonight we learned the need for a revolution in mental health and addiction is very clear. The call to mothers is an answer to a prayer people didn't know they had. And finally, the seeds of this revolution are found in the process of a taste of Wonderland, the cracks, the grief, and the new possibilities. It is how they are mixed together that creates the magic. So in our highlights email, we will be sending information on Hilary's full-on tea party that's coming up on April 28th. So you can email the Call to Mothers group directly to be part of their next session. In addition, if you are interested to know more about Lee's mindset coaching packages, her information will be included on that email as well. Our next LeeLa event will be held on Wednesday, May 19th with facilitator and coach Tammy Cunningham. Tammy will share her story on how she approached difficult times, specifically her journey with the big C, and the things she has discovered along the way. Her journey has inspired many, and she will talk about the principles and training that turned her path into a positive learning experience. Sign up to be part of a meaningful discussion full of love, laughter, and connection. And until next time, everyone, be well, aloha, and good night.